Over the past few years, it's become clear that Russia has been planning something big, something beyond its fight with Ukraine. It's eyeing the rest of Europe. There are rumors that Russia spent the better part of 2023 and 2024 reviving a Soviet-era military base just 100 miles from Finland's border. It's a single garrison district in Petrozavodsk in Karelia. There, Russia is amassing what it calls the 44th Army Corps. This is a formation that, on paper, could eventually host up to 15,000 troops, up from around 3,000 currently in the region. Finnish broadcaster Yle, using satellite imagery and Finnish military analysis, has confirmed that a Russia training area dormant since the early 2000s has been transitioned from overgrown forest to an active construction site. New facilities are going up, vehicles are being parked in the open, and the infrastructure of a long-term staging hub is beginning to take shape. But when you look closer at the satellite imagery, read the order of battle, and trace where these units have been actually deployed, this revival tells a different story. In truth, Russia is trying to create yet another posturing piece to be used as a scare tactic aimed at NATO. Some sources suggest that a war between the two forces might be inevitable. But it's a move that they also believe has already backfired, creating yet another humiliation for Russian President Vladimir Putin. So, time for a deeper dive. The action round Petrozavodsk is only part of the buildup. In actuality, the full scale of the rebuilding covers three other sites: Kamenka on the Karelian Isthmus, Severomorsk II, and Olynia. Kamenka is by far the most problematic for international relations, being only 40 miles from Finland's border, with satellite imagery suggesting 130 tents that could house up to 2,000 troops if they were fully manned. Some reports also suggested Russia is expanding a motorized rifle brigade at the base in Kamenka, where the 138 Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade is stationed. Independent outlet Medusa has also reported that another unit in the region, the 25th Motorized Rifle Brigade near Luga, could be expanded to nearly 10,000 troops, potentially boosting the area's overall military readiness. Severomorsk II is a formerly inactive airfield that's been restationed with Russian helicopters, either the Mi-8 or Mi-17 series, and the Olynia base is housing strategic bombers. If that last base sounds familiar, it's because Ukraine has already targeted it previously in July 2025 during the famous Operation Spiderweb. After a dozen Tupolev bombers that were stationed in the base were targeted by drones, Russia doubled down on using some of its northernmost locations for aircraft storage, transporting more bombers to the base and trying to reinforce it against future drone attacks. All of this is presumably a part of the broader effort, publicized in early 2025, to modernize Russia's military infrastructure in the region. Murmansk Regional Governor Andrei Chibis announced in early 2024 that the entire military refit will cost Russia somewhere around 42 billion rubles, roughly $460 million at the time. This is an enormous undertaking and a huge budgetary drain for a country that's already in an active war and yet somehow planning for another one. So, the question isn't whether Russia is building, it clearly is. The question is what that build actually means and what Finland is going to do about it. But why is this particular piece of territory so important to both countries? Petrozavodsk is the capital of the Republic of Karelia on the western shore of Lake Onega. Only 100 miles away from the nearest border, it's close enough to Finland to matter strategically. Yet, at the same time, it's far enough from Ukraine to let Moscow pretend it's building toward the future rather than shoring up the present. The actual importance of Karelia to the broader Russia-Finland geopolitics only makes this more suspicious. The region is the only reliable land route between the two countries. It was the site of the prolonged Russo-Finnish War during World War II, when the Soviet Union invaded Finland under the pretense of security concerns over St. Petersburg. But even broader than this, the Russian region itself is a vital strategic highway, figuratively, between the nuclear weapon arsenals housed on the Kola Peninsula further north. Essentially, if Russia wants to keep using the Arctic Circle as a natural deterrent to protect its nuclear weapons, while still positioning them close to European borders, Karelia is the only line of defense in a hypothetical land invasion. According to some analyses, plans to create and station the 44th Army Corps in Karelia began circulating in late 2022. The plans were formally established in 2024 under the Leningrad Military District and tied administratively to the Republic of Karelia. Its reported order of battle includes a 72nd Motor Rifle Division with multiple motor rifle regiments, plus a separate motor rifle brigade. Bloomsbury Intelligence and Security Institute, or BISI, a UK think tank, estimated that as many as 80,000 troops could eventually be stationed off Finland's border. That number, however, would almost certainly not be achievable until after the Ukraine war ends, when Russia finishes its purported military reforms. But the actual foundation of a military presence is there nonetheless. Satellite imagery from the region has also confirmed a significant air presence beyond the previous air bases. Ule has identified approximately 80 Su-35s and Su-27s belonging to the 159th Fighter Aviation Regiment at Petrozavodsk-Besovets Air Base, a unit that's been permanently stationed there for decades but has recently drawn renewed attention amid increased military activity in the region. Imagery has also shown several Mi-24 Hind attack helicopters at the airfield, an older Soviet-era platform rather than a new system. Ule additionally reports roughly 10 radar stations at the garrison, which fits Russia's pattern of thickening air surveillance coverage along NATO's new eastern and northern frontier. This also plays into the aforementioned broader context of Karelia being a vital outpost to prevent Europe from accessing the Kola Peninsula. Now, a second project is underway in the Murmansk region, where Russia installed a new artillery brigade in June 2025 to support the formations along the Kola axis, again less than 100 miles away from Finland. Taken together, the two projects sketch out a longer-term Russian posture, where the goal is to deter NATO's presence in the area under the pretense of nuclear defense. As you may know, Russia has repeatedly changed its nuclear defense policy to the point where it's difficult to ascertain which events and attacks they consider a threat warranting a widespread nuclear response. At this rate, it's safe to say that Russia's nuclear assets are one of the major reasons the West has stood down when discussing a confrontation with Russia. If the Kremlin feels that its nuclear arsenal in Kola is reasonably threatened, it could launch a preemptive strike that could have unforeseen consequences for the world as a whole. So that's the defensive part of the Karelia reinforcements. But what about the offensive parts? It turns out there's a major catch when it comes to actually manning the stations in the newly rebuilt complexes. The units associated with the 44th Army Corps are not sitting in Karelia waiting to be deployed. They've already been deployed to Ukraine. By May 2024, members of this unit were involved in Russia's northern push in Ukraine. Later, reporting placed the same corps near the Kursk axis. And by late 2024, units linked to the 44th Army Corps were confirmed to be involved in the fighting around Vovchansk during Russia's broader northern operation. So, it's safe to say that instead of the proposed Karelian defenses, which on paper would be used for strategic deterrence, Russia created a half-formed battalion that was, in actuality, just immediately fed to the same grinding attritional war that's already cost Russia over 1 million casualties by most credible estimates. What Russia is building, or trying to build, in Petrozavodsk right now is more than just combat-ready headquarters full of rested soldiers. It's basically scaffolding for a force that doesn't fully exist, yet. While the foundations might be there, the money it will require is being funneled into a project that might never get off the ground because the soldiers who would man them could be gone over the next few months with nobody to replace them. Russia also has several thousand Soviet-era armored vehicles, trucks and artillery systems in storage across the region. That sounds impressive until you remember what storage actually means in Russia. Some of it is genuinely recoverable, but a lot of it has been cannibalized for parts. Remember, Russia is burning through hundreds of tanks worth of equipment and parts in Ukraine each month, yet has limited capacities to manufacture new T-90s and retrofit older tanks. The math for long-term stationing simply doesn't work out. Now, if you want to stay current on Russia's military capacity and how it's holding up under the strain of the Ukraine war, make sure to subscribe to The Military Show. We cover the tempo of the war and how Russia is slowly being drained of vital resources, be it manpower, tanks, air forces, or simply intelligence and strategy. Back in Karelia, there's yet another problem with the Russia proposed garrisoning plan, having enough troops to man the facility. Building the actual stations and infrastructure is arguably the easiest part. Even supplying enough tanks and aircraft to maintain notable coverage is a relatively tame task. But sustaining the proposed meaningful fighting forces, which could number anywhere from 10,000 to 80,000 or even 100,000, is another matter entirely. You have to remember that all that equipment and soldiers need to have supplies brought in constantly, particularly given that Karelia is a relatively barren part of the country, only loosely connected to major population, industry, and agricultural centers. The fuel flow and railway throughput are actively going away from that part of the country. Russian railways have been refocused on supplying the actual war effort for the past 4 years. Building and supplying another active regiment is going to put additional strain on already strained systems. Then there's the matter of long-term maintenance. Beyond traditional upkeep requirements, Karelia has a sub-Arctic climate. Things break down faster in the cold, and the margin for error is much smaller. During the long and brutal winter, the supply chain is much more rigid and difficult to align with unexpected developments, such as the possibility of an actual NATO-Russia conflict. And this is where Russia's posturing starts to look less like strategy and more like a dare it cannot comfortably back up. Finland isn't just watching what Russia builds across the border, it's been answering it systematically and in ways that are harder to dismiss than a press release. Let's start with the fence. Finland is currently constructing a 124-mile fence along its border with Russia. While this is only a small part of the entire 800-mile border between the two countries, the full build is on track to be completed by the end of 2026. The fence is roughly 15 feet high, with metal railings topped by a meter of barbed wire, cameras, sensors, loudspeakers, and lights. Finnish border guards suggest that the fence is designed to have surveillance cameras installed every 60 feet, with part of the barrier even extending underground. Of course, a fence with some cameras and wire won't be enough to stop a full-blown invasion by tanks and other heavy armor, but it's a clear indicator that Finland is spending a lot of effort in increasing surveillance of the border and creating early warning systems for both civilian and military infractions. Then there are the landmines. They're the most direct signal Finland has sent to Russia in years. In April 2025, Finland announced it was withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel landmines, citing Russia's long-term danger to all of Europe as the reason why. Finland formally presented the withdrawal proposal in July 2025, with the actual withdrawal beginning in January 2026. Finland's defense minister stated the decision was based on lessons drawn directly from Russia's tactics in Ukraine, where infantry operations at scale have made anti-personnel mines a central defensive tool. So, Finland went from destroying over 1 million landmines when it joined the Ottawa Convention in 2012 to reversing that decision in full. They weren't alone. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland made the same move. In fact, the entire eastern NATO flank has collectively decided that the treaty no longer fits the threat environment. While there are no actual reports of Finland laying down minefields just yet, the mere possibility of them being planted along the border should make Russia think twice about overstepping its bounds. Finland is also hosting a new regional land forces command center opened in Mikkeli, roughly 90 miles from the Russian border. With an initial staff of around 10 officers, expected to eventually scale to 50, it's supposed to operate under NATO's Norfolk Command to coordinate allied land forces across northern Europe. The headquarters gives the alliance a permanent planning and coordination node inside Finnish territory, which is different from exercises and agreements. It means NATO can run joint planning, logistics, and command integration in peacetime so that in a crisis, those relationships already exist. The joint brigade formed with Sweden in September 2024 also adds to the ground defense component. The formation is built around Sweden's Norrbotten Mechanized Brigade, which is specifically trained for combat in harsh winter conditions and includes 5 battalions and support units. Swedish Archer 155mm howitzers have been positioned in Lapland, giving the brigade the ability to reach targets more than 30 miles away with precision fire and the ability to reposition in under a minute. An additional 5,000 to 7,000 Finnish troops will be permanently stationed alongside the brigade. With that, the combined force in Lapland roughly matches the number of Russian units currently deployed in the northern direction. Finland has also approved a NATO rail link through Sweden to Norway's Arctic port of Narvik. The rail connection will allow faster deployment of troops and heavy equipment and reduce Finland's dependence on Russian-gauge rail tracks. In a crisis, this means Allied reinforcements from across Scandinavia can reach Finnish Lapland by rail rather than waiting for air transport or road movement through difficult terrain. And in December 2025, Finland hosted the first ever Eastern Flank Summit in Helsinki, bringing together leaders of 8 EU countries on the EU's eastern edge. The gathering called for the EU support in building credible and united defense capabilities along the border with Russia from north to south. Finland is actively organizing a response to the Russian buildup and pressing allies to speed up a strategic response. For their own part, Finland can mobilize 947,800 troops for wartime service, backed by a reserve of roughly 900,000 citizens. How? Well, they're one of the few countries with mandatory military service for all men, and one where the reserves stay integrated with the military throughout their working lives. Finland is also committed to raising its defense spending by 3% of GDP by 2029, up from 2.3% currently. It's a significant investment for a country that already punches well above its weight militarily. And Finland is also stocking up on equipment. In May 2024, Finland decided to purchase JASSM ER cruise missiles, which are long-range air-to-surface weapons. Pair those with Finland's incoming F-35 fleet, and Finland can target sensitive sites deep inside Russian territory in both Karelia and the Kola Peninsula. All of these point to Finland as a nation with decades of territorial defense doctrine built around the assumption that the threat is real, the weather will be bad, and every citizen should understand the stakes. The Finnish military has already gone to war with Russia, losing around 10% of its territory. It doesn't plan on letting that happen again. Then, in early March 2026, Finland confirmed its plan of lifting its long-standing ban on hosting nuclear weapons for NATO's eastern flank. While there's no confirmation on when actual nukes will be stationed inside the country, the mere possibility of having weapons located just 100 or so miles from Russia's border and nuclear arsenal should put Russia on edge. And it has. Just days after the nuclear weapon agreement, the Kremlin stated that this move would be a monumental mistake and attempted to influence NATO's internal decision-making by making the same saber-rattling arguments they've been using since February 2022. But the uncomfortable reality is that every time Russia positions forces near Finland, it inadvertently places more Russian assets within striking range of Finnish weapons. Building fixed infrastructure in Karelia basically hands Finland a predictable set of nodes to watch, index, and target. Every new depot, every vehicle park, every fresh barracks block is something Finnish and NATO intelligence can track continuously. Yet, somehow, Russia's illogical moves still add up to make political sense inside the Kremlin. When Finland joined NATO in April 2023, it handed Moscow a serious domestic problem. NATO's expansion alongside Russia's borders crossed the same line that Putin created to justify the war in Ukraine itself. So Russia did what it's always done when it felt cornered, posturing and militarizing in an attempt to sway public opinion to align with pre-existing values. Local Russian officials in Karelia had previously described the garrison buildup as a responsible task and promised that troops would bring families, economic life and services to the region. It's the classic garrison town pitch, where militarizing your backyard for your own good. The clinic will have substandard healthcare, but it will exist. Timing matters here too. Petrozavodsk looks like the kind of infrastructure investment you make when you believe the Ukraine war won't end quickly and you'll want strategic options in the 2027-2030 window that align to a broader European assessment that Russia will attempt to regenerate and reassert pressure after Ukraine. The new target might not necessarily be against Finland, but against the alliance's more vulnerable geographic seams like the Suwalki Gap or the Baltic approaches. But this creates even more opportunity for Russia to make huge mistakes in the long run. If it stretches its current resources too thin, It might mean Ukraine has more breathing room to continue its counter-offensive. Should that happen, Russia would fail on both fronts. And if the war in Ukraine doesn't end favorably, Putin loses legitimacy. If Putin doesn't send a clear signal to the Russian population that it's answering the supposed NATO threat, which was his modus operandi for decades now, then his propaganda machine slowly unravels and he's humiliated. That would be the true failure with the newest Russian military buildups. Why would you pressure an alliance you're not at war with when you're already losing badly in an actual war you started? At this point, it's not clear if even Putin knows the answer. Now, if you want to check out how precisely NATO's northern flank is preparing for the long game, watch this video. Or if you want to stay in touch with the most recent news on the Ukraine-Russian war, subscribe to the Military Show for daily videos.